Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. I hope you've all had a wonderful Wednesday so far. Today is a big day in terms of financial markets as the Federal Reserve are coming together for their meeting to discuss policies and changes that they may or may not want to make. We know that the entire financial sector, equities, commodities, crypto, have all faced a bit of a downwind with the Federal Reserve threatening to tackle inflation and impose deflationary measures such as interest rate hikes and so on and so forth, which typically has negative connotations for markets. That's why we've seen the pullback that we've seen, not just in the crypto space, but across the board. So this is going to be our daily cryptocurrency market update. We're going to be looking at a lot in this video. We're going to be diving into, of course, the Federal Reserve, and the meeting that is taking place today. We're not too far off it at all, and how this may impact markets. We're going to be looking at the traditional stock market. The FTSE opened today. The top 100 stocks in the UK saw a really strong open today. I would imagine that the S&P is going to follow. The S&P is indeed yet to open. We're also going to be talking about going into some articles related to the crypto space, such as the fact that the IMF urges El Salvador to remove Bitcoin status as legal tender. The empire strikes back. And this is really, when Bitcoin came around as a replacement for the fiat systems, Satoshi, the genius that he was, he'd be a Nobel Prize winner if he was still about today. If he was about today, he would definitely have already been killed or put in prison. But he really understood the fiat systems and the flaws within them. And there's this kind of macro battle taking place with Bitcoin, blockchain, and fiat systems, and us moving away from one system of value to another. And that's, you're seeing this play out with El Salvador. And of course, I do believe El Salvador will come under some kind of punishment from the likes of the IMF and the World Bank and so on and so forth. We're also going to talk about the fact that the YouTube CEO hints that NFTs should be added to creator platforms. The world is moving towards blockchain, ladies and gentlemen. And what people don't realize and understand is even when we get a pullback with the price, ultimately the building continues. And this value that is getting built up whilst we have periods of slumpy price action eventually will become realized. And that's why we make these videos daily. It's why we've been making them for over a year. And it's actually why, I've been very unpopular at times and very popular at times with my friends and families for going on about this for the past 5 years. I really believe in crypto and what it's trying to do. And we're seeing it grip and gain implement itself within the world that we live today, and there's a lot more of this to come. So let's take a look at the overall markets as a whole. Seeing a little bit of a green day today, somewhat following the traditional markets. We'll talk about bonds a little bit because they have a very good hit rate in predicting the direction of markets, as they are very leveraged to finance and how it is doing or how it's not doing in economics. Let's take a look at the total. Now, when we see a bit of a green day, you guys know this was the pattern that we thought potentially, or was a potential play for the markets as a whole, and we've obviously broke to the downside of that, having failed to kind of rally and find a number of points of resistance before then selling off lower, based on the headwind from the Federal Reserve and so on and so forth. This rally is somewhat insignificant. Is it a step in the right direction? Yes, but we need to see strength now come in. You can see on these big pullbacks typically, and we've explained this before, when you have these big sell-offs, liquidation flush outs, a scarce or a scary event in the markets, what typically happens is it's like somebody getting into a car crash. They're not going to be so quick to re-enter a car having just been involved in a crash. So there's always this kind of period of indecision and slow kind of momentum. But what we are seeing is people willing to step in and buy at these prices. And we did show you yesterday that we're actually seeing institutional sell-offs or institutional sell pressure through various vehicles such as coin shares and so on. Grayscale actually start to wane and flip to the other side and actually become buyers. And we also know that if you look at the largest Bitcoin wallet addresses, they do every time there is a dip within the crypto space, step in and accumulate more Bitcoin particularly. So this isn't really too much to get excited about just yet. We need to set up structure. We need to start forming a clear reversal, not just bottoming structure that may lead to a reversal. We need to start putting in higher highs and higher lows and break the downward trend that the cryptocurrency market is currently in. And remember, this is all very tethered to what's taking place with the Fed and monetary policies around the world. There's also, we know that Russia, and we covered it not that long ago, the chief of their banking, I think, came out and essentially, or the chief of the head bank in Russia essentially came out and said that, he thinks crypto should be banned. And now they've kind of reneged on that, and they've gone, okay, not banned, but regulated. And we certainly me as somebody involved in the crypto space would love them to regulate it. So at least we have a clear framework to work around. I actually think regulation is going to be significantly more bullish, depending on a few things that they decide to regulate, as long as they don't regulate it out of existence, then it is bearish, because what that does is it gives the big money the opportunity to really get involved. And we see the likes of BlackRock, we see the likes of Tim Schwab's, James Schwab's $7.5 trillion asset fund, all filing for Bitcoin ETFs, because they want to capitalize on the crypto boom that is coming. I mean, we're in it now, guys. You don't realize how lucky you are as individuals to be alive right now with this opportunity staring you in the face. And some of you will take it, some of you won't. It's your choice entirely. Ethereum, of course, is following. We can see these big wicks, so people are willing to step in and accumulate here. Just because you have a big hammering wick doesn't mean it's the bottom. It just means you do find buyers within this. And of course, Cardano, you know, this area here has been absolutely magnificent strength for it, and could indeed continue to be that. But we need to set up actual structure. We need to start clearing some resistance levels, start flipping and making higher highs and higher lows. And I think we'll be off to the races. I ultimately think crypto is going to recover and put in higher highs across the board. Not only as a market, but the individual cryptos within it are going to do quite well. We put on a number of trades. We put on ADAX yesterday as a trade. I think we got in at 68. I had to do a few orders because the liquidity wasn't quite there on X markets. But we got in an average of 68 cents. I think it's 30-something% up today. So there's money to be made in these markets. You've just got to look for those opportunities. They don't come to you. Crypto, largely, since 2020 March, has been a very easy game to play. Now you've got to actually earn your money rather than just throwing it into anything and watching it double. So today, of course, is the day the Fed get together and they talk about a number of things: monetary policy, you know, global monetary tightening, reducing the balance sheet, and of course they are talking about upping interest rates. And essentially, people are worried that they're going to implement these before it takes place. They're not going to up interest rates, in my opinion, before they deal with, you know, before they stop stimulating the economy. Essentially, it's kind of counterintuitive. So I don't think that an interest rate is coming, if it even does come in March, until March. I think that's the time period we're looking at. And I think an interest rate is going to be very insignificant. And is largely been over-exaggerated, as markets love to do. Markets love to over-exaggerate everything. And then what typically happens, certainly in my experience with markets, is it's a lot less. They over-exaggerate things to the downside and the upside. It works both ways. But the actual news that we get is typically a lot less than what was expected. And that's just markets for you, unfortunately. Treasury yields climb with Fed meeting and geopolitical tensions in focus. So they're talking about Russia there and Ukraine, I believe. We'll see. Could be a non-starter. It's not really something I've done too much looking into. And this is why we do these updates. And lots of YouTubers have been catching on to this recently, and it's why we've been doing these, you know, for a long time now, is because political events, global financial events, all have an impact on the crypto space, as we have similar actors involved in those areas that we do in ours. So that's why we do these updates. Crypto industry weighs likelihood of rising rates as Fed meeting kicks off. So the Fed meeting started yesterday. Today is where we're really going to get a lot coming out of the FOMC. We'll see what happens, but ultimately, you know, we're seeing the FTSE see a huge uptick. I think the S&P is likely to follow, and of course, crypto is tethered to that, and also seeing the beneficiaries of it. Let's talk about some threads now in relation to crypto specific. Lots of people calling for a bear market. We've said that's not our bias. We don't think we are entering a bear market. In fact, we think bear markets are going to be redefined as we know them to be previously within the crypto space. I don't think we are going into a 2-year-long bear market like we previously had, in the same way that 2021 didn't play out, in the same way 2017 didn't, or prior to that 2013. The 4-year cycle theory, although the fundamental reasons for it being a theory and playing out, you know, the halving that takes place and the supply has to adjust, or the supply gets adjusted and the price has to adjust in accordance, those fundamentals aren't as strong as a driver as they once were. Crypto is now a maturer asset class and is moved off far more than just its own fundamentals, and we've seen that play out over the past 2 years. And it's very exciting, certainly for somebody that's been here for nearly 5 years, for me to watch things evolve, and so on and so forth. Just like cryptocurrencies evolve and progress, markets also do, as they get larger, and so on and so forth. So this is a tweet. The total supply in profits held by short-term hodlers, 7-day exponential moving average. Right, now everyone is worried about going into a corrective phase, abbreviations bear market, Bitcoin. However, we have actually been in one since the first 2021 peak for BTC, and it looks like we might be coming out of it soon. So you can see these are people within profits. We're at a record sort of low level. The peak that he's talking about in 2021 was, of course, in April, and it looks like we've been in somewhat of a corrective phase since then, certainly if you're talking about people within the money and not within the money. And he then goes on to say, yes, that means we put in a new all-time high during a running / flat correction in an impulsive trend. But remember, we had a short squeeze from 29k to 40k, and no one would sell after that. So somehow we got to an all-time high during a corrective phase. So he's arguing that Bitcoin is actually still bullish, and we've actually seen a corrective phase after this period over here. And I happen to agree with him. You know, I'm nothing but bullish on crypto. And it sounds mad, certainly when we go through sustained periods of the downtrend. We were calling for new all-time highs down here, the same way that we're calling for them over here, and the same way that we were calling for them over here, and for as long as we've been on YouTube, and certainly as long as I've been in crypto. This space is on an adoption journey, is on a path that it's only just started walking on, and has a long way to go. And there's a number of variables. Remember, we're still not as liquid as some of these big assets. So even small things can cause significant downside. This was largely caused by a lot of the miners having to flee China, becoming forced sellers, and so on and so forth. That sell pressure is now gone. You know, there was a huge sell pressure from Asia. We know that based on on-chain metrics over last year. That has kind of been eradicated. So this was very interesting. This was from Plan C. I'll go ahead and give him a follow. Give this a like. I think I retweeted it. There's some amazing people on Twitter. Twitter is actually probably one of the most toxic spaces I've ever been a part of, certainly with certain communities where some of the individuals within it have kind of immortalized themselves behind an avatar, whereas the in real life picture of them is very, very different. I know that firsthand, as I know a lot of these individuals on Twitter. Personally, I've spoken to them on Discord and so on and so forth. I know what their characters are like, and it doesn't match up to the persona that is... the persona that they kind of have. But essentially Twitter is a very toxic space, but it's also a fantastic place for information because you've got a lot of creativity going on there, and this was a really good point that I think was raised here by the real Plan C. This was another thread. I believe that this was actually from... Oh, this is from Will Clement. We'll go on to one that Lynn Alden essentially had retweeted in just a second. There is a hardcore base of Bitcoin hodlers that dollar cost average relentlessly. No matter the direction of the price, they just keep stacking sats. And they're doing this for a reason, because they believe in what's taking place. What has the Root commented under here? He's showing that the same thing is true. Truly impressive how every growing hodl army manages to make second top while the hype was gone. Remember, we made this top whilst there was no hype around crypto whatsoever. Lots of hype over here, no hype over here. And that's because price is determined at the margin. So this is all kind of confirming. Hodlers don't necessarily affect the price on the day. So they don't particularly... So people that hodl, they don't really play much of a role in the price. What they do and how they do affect the price is they do take liquidity off the table and cause scarcity. And scarcity eventually gets realized. So I hope the picture that I'm painting for you guys daily is a clear one. I'm ultimately a big believer in the crypto space. You guys know that, and I don't think I need to keep reiterating it as much as I potentially do. So this is from Will. Will is fantastic. For somebody, I mean, age is really irrelevant, but I think he's younger than myself. Very early 20s, if that, I think, and he has a very good understanding of the crypto space, and certainly on-chain analytics. He's really top of his class, in my opinion, at that, and he does a lot more than just on-chain analytics. He goes above and beyond. This was something tweeted from, or this was a retweet, I believe, from Lynn Alden, and this is from Jurium Timmer. And this guy is, I think, the head honcho at Fidelity. He's the global macro Fidelity student of history, chart maker. He's somebody that works for Fidelity, which of course is an investment company, and he's kind of putting the use case or the argument for Bitcoin actually, you know, continuing on its adoption curve, and in kind of sync with what Plan C was saying that, look, you know, this is typically where we are currently, signals a good kind of bottom that we're at, you know, we're likely to see a higher impulsion from this. And he also talks about the fact that you get overshoots to the upside and downside. We said markets are very much like that prior. We will get onto a couple of articles in a second, but this is just some more sort of on-chain and data to support my bullish bias, to prove my own point, I guess. But you guys take a look at this. There is, of course, a downside argument, which I think, you know, is always relevant. Markets don't just go up, they also go down. But I think the upside argument is far more, there's far more evidence backing that one up than there is the downside. The downside, to me, there's more hopium in thinking that Bitcoin is going back to 20 or 10k than there is thinking it's going up to 100. I really believe that. And we know that, you know, markets are taking a bit of a different turn. But let's get into this thread, and then we'll wrap up with what the IMF had to say in regards to El Salvador. And of course, we'll talk about some of the YouTube CEOs' comments in regards to adding NFTs. And this is all coming. The NFT space is still exceptionally early. I've previously said NFTs were garbage, junk, and that they were just a fad. They're here to stay, guys. In actual fact, we've been trading CNFTs. And for those of you that have watched my videos will know that we've made quite a lot of money off getting in at some extremely cheap floor prices, and you know, some of them of 10, 15x. And that's all whilst the market is going down, along with that kind of trading and so on and so forth. So let's get over this. This is, of course, Bitcoin, the daily data source, FMRCO, fact set. It has been a bad trip for crypto. The GS Bitcoin sensitive equity basket already took out the 2021 lows. Not a great sign. I thought 40k would be a bottom based on my demand model and on-chain dynamics via the dormancy flow indicator. But here we are at 35k, and there's a thread following this. So he thought, this is somebody that's been in markets for a year, and he thought 40k was going to be the bottom. He got that wrong. And on that point, nobody is going to predict this market with 100% accuracy. It is impossible. It's never, ever taken place. And anybody that tells you that they do is dishonest, and it isn't worth listening to, in my opinion. Humility is always something that you should, in my opinion, carry with you. And we get things wrong as analyzers. We follow certain things. We follow certain charts. We follow certain indicators. But these and models, but models are valid until invalidated, like Plan B stock to flow model. And then we move on. We don't cry about it. We don't look for people to blame. We move on and adjust accordingly. And this, of course, is the thread you can see over here. This is the model that he has in play. And a lot of the time, the on-chain analytics are extremely bullish, but the price just isn't. And that's because price is determined at the margin. It's determined what's trading on that day, essentially, what's going back and forth, what's entering and what's exiting, new money coming in and old money going out. And this is how things take place. And this is why we've seen such a headwind for crypto, because we know the Fed and them kind of rumbling markets cause people to go, well, we don't want to be sat holding Bitcoin in a risky environment. You know, it could see a lot more downside than holding something else or just being sat in cash. And if we can sit in cash, then we can accumulate Bitcoin at a lower price and make more money off it. So I hope all of this is making sense. Second part to his thread, Bitcoin often overshoots to the upside and downside, though. So maybe that's all that is happening here. Potentially a scare, if you will. Here is the entity adjustment dormancy flow, which measures the transfer from weak hands to strong hands. It is in a range that stopped every previous decline. And you can see where we are today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys can see that my head isn't in the way. So I agree with this. This also backs up what Plan C was saying and what a number of other on-chain. I could bring up 1,000,001 different on-chain analytics that are all very bullish right now. But we know that, you know, sometimes they don't work out that way. And since this thread was posted only a day ago, we're already seeing the markets uptick. And you guys know that we did actually trade this to the upside. We got a lot of slack for it. Lots of people making little smart comments like, thanks for liquidity. Bitcoin's like 8% up since then. The next part of the thread, and here is Bitcoin relevant to demand model. It has overshooted many times in the past, sometimes by a little, and sometimes by a lot. Based on these fundamentals, the lower Bitcoin falls, the more undervalued it will become on a fundamental basis. Fundamentals eventually get realized. Remember that. You can see demand is at an all-time low, and we still, or a significant low, and we actually still went on to put in new highs, despite not seeing a huge impulse for demand. So imagine when the demand and the FOMO starts up again, Bitcoin's going above and beyond, in my opinion. The next chart that he has to show is the Bitcoin to gold ratio is now back in the support zone and is 1.5 standard deviation from its trend line. This is Bitcoin versus gold. You want to look at charts from a number of different perspectives. And below, we see that short-term momentum is now supporting a bullish divergence. And he's pointing out the bullish divergence here. Lower low on the chart, but we've got a higher high on the RSI or the divergence. So Bitcoin clearly got caught in the liquidity storm that is now sweeping the more speculative side of stock markets. But unlike non-profitable tech stocks, Bitcoin has a fundamental underpinning that will likely get more compelling over time. The next part is now the liquidity tide is going back out. The fundamentals should matter more than ever in 2022. And that's the end of the thread. And I thought that was brilliant. Let's move on to El Salvador coming under fire from the IMF. The empire strikes back. This is to be expected, guys. At the end of the day, you know, the dollar as the world reserve currency and these kind of central banks have huge amount of powers over the nations that, you know, money throughout history has been used as a tool of enslavement, really, for nothing else, or for lack of a better term. It gives you a huge amount of leverage over whoever uses that currency because you control, effectively, their lives, you know, whether things are expensive for them or cheap for them and so on and so forth. So, of course, a country like El Salvador moving towards independency and moving towards a new system of value that they don't control is a big no-no. And that's really what's going on here and why we see a lot of pushback. But El Salvador, as far as I can see, don't really care about the threats levied by the IMF and so on and so forth, and are going to continue in the direction that they've already started on. And then, of course, we've got YouTube. The YouTube CEO hints that NFTs could be added to creator platforms. It's all coming. The world is moving towards crypto, ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not. You can either choose to be a part of it, or you can choose to sit on the sidelines. The choice is yours. That is really all I have for you in this video, guys. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. If you've enjoyed the content, like is always appreciated. So is a comment. And I'll catch you all hopefully in the next YouTube video. There's a link to my Discord in the description. Head over to my Twitter and follow me at RealAllInCrypto. And I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching.